So we're learning Kuntres HaChinuch V'Adracha from the Frierdiker Rebbe. We're in the middle of page 53, which is chapter Tes. And the Rebbe is explaining over here the idea, the difference of students and people because of their work situation. Remember, we're analyzing now the various different situations, right? Before we were talking about the mahus ha'adam, the essence of man, and now we're talking about the situation. Situation meaning, what kind of home does he come from, wealthy or poor? What's his business like? Where does he come from? All of those things. So right now, in Tes, he's analyzing his chalkos alpi inyone hisaskus. The differences between people based on the type of performance, performance of jobs that they do. Now, 53, we're at we'll go back to the second paragraph, okay? Davar muchlet. It starts, it's readily accepted. Davar muchlet b'muskal rishon. It's readily accepted. B'muskal rishon means like kind of whatever falls into your head first is called muskal rishon. Kisug hayoshvei oyel nale mesug abale esik. That the category of those that sit in tents and learn Torah are greater than those that work. And right here, the Rebbe kind of has a parenthesis, v'loi habali melocha v'avoida, but not those that are craftsmen. And we explained yesterday, based on the note, also that we're referring to people who have free time, who don't have free time. They don't run their own work. They work for someone else, and they're meshubed. They're obligated to the employer. Whereas Bali Malocha, someone who is a craftsman on his own, making cabinets or the like, makes his own hours. The Gamze Muskin b'Muchlet. The Rebbe says this too is agreed surely by all, which is Ki Hevdel Muhusi Bnei Adam Yesh Lehem Yachas Yadua B'Ashpoa Gam Al Yonis Askusam. The fact that there are differences, essential difference amongst people, as we established earlier in the previous chapters, that has, to some degree, an impact, a hashpah, also on the type of work that they do. And this is very true, right? In other words, depending on who you really are, that's what type of work or lifestyle, as he'll use the word yesterday, you choose. It's not just you went to college and it was a career choice, and the career counselor tells you that this is what he thinks you'd be good in and go into this field. That's true, but it comes because he senses in you that this is who you are. So there are certain people that work very well for others. If they would be on their own, it would be a disaster. Give you another example. Some people work well at home, and some people they wouldn't get anything done at home. They would go on the net. They would go on television. They would sleep. They would just eat, right? And other people in their house, they get so much more accomplished. Yes. So in other words, based on who you are, that's the type of career and job you choose. That's what he just said. The Mishu Chacham Ubal Kisharin, he uses another example, someone who's wise and talented. When he's involved in his business affairs, guess what? He's going to be separate, meaning he's not going to be caught in the web of business, because really, what is he about Chacham and about Kishrei? In other words, he has to work because he has to make money for his family, for Parnasa and all that. But really, who is he about Chacham, about Kishrei, who wants to, study and read and all of that? Nevertheless, even he, such a person, Habal Sura Mitzad Mahusay, the Rebbe calls this person a refined character. Essentially, his essence is more refined. Rochuk Erkoi Misuga Yoshevoyo. He's still far from the Torah scholar. In other words, even a businessman who is this type of businessman, nevertheless, the fact is he's still engaged in work. Versus someone whose full-time occupation is learning, not his full-time, the type of job that he has is Yoshev Oil, he's of a different category. In other words, are you going to compare someone who works a half a day and learns a half a day to someone that learns a whole day? No, it's two different people. Next paragraph. Asher al kain, therefore, hine behechich asher abali asokim v'yosh v'oil yischalku b'ma shehem muchuyovim b'limud v'anhoga. Therefore, you must say that business people and those that learn are different in what they're obligated to learn and how they're obligated to behave. Ki hem shnei derochem mucholokim zeh v'zeh, because these are two different paths. Now he's going to enumerate, very interesting, these things about Yoshevoil. Let's follow. Yoshevoil, number one, Itaisav biyodai. He controls his own time. But we're not talking about a yeshiva bacher or kollel like getting a check for learning. We're talking about someone who sincerely, he's 50 years old and he wants to learn. He learns all day. You know, I'm talking about when he's in total control. Like some of you chavre, you want to learn. You're on the shiur now. You know what I'm saying? No one's paying you for it and all that. Beis, chai menucha. He lives a tranquil life. He doesn't have real estate investments to worry whether he has a tenant or he doesn't have a tenant. He doesn't have stocks to worry if it's up or down. This man is one thing and one thing only. Chaya menucha. He sits and learns, and he has a tranquil life. No anxieties. Or no anxieties. Less anxieties. Less anxieties. Gimel. He has the choice of finding himself in an environment that he chooses to be in. He doesn't have to go and do his work on the near the beach or Manhattan or in the airport where I was last night, you know, and every time I pick up my head, I see someone who's, you know, inappropriately dressed. You don't got to go to the airport. You can sit and learn at your home and not see anybody. Okay? So that's what he means here. Number, Loi Kain. So these were three identifying issues that about a Yoshev Oil has. Loi Kain, conversely, Habal Asakim, a business person, Aleph. Here's the contrast. Eini Taisam Biyodam. Their time is not in their own hand. Sorry, you got to be at your work 9 o'clock, 9 to 5, etc. Or listen, we have a deadline. You gotta fulfill the deadline. Beautiful. Even someone who conducts himself in a proper way according to the dictates of Torah, who also is busy. Right? Someone says, Moshe, I'm commissioning you, I'm paying you to draw this, right? By this and this time. Or someone does it with me with a book. I'm obligated to them to come to a time. They're paying me not just for the job, but also for a time frame. So I'm osuk. Beis, another contrast that we find by the Balasokim. Hoasokim matritem betivam. By nature, Avi, business is stress related. That's it. Jump up and down, left and right. You ain't getting out of it. And most business people do not have a tranquil life. By the way, he's not saying right here better or worse. He's just giving you the facts the way he sees them. Gimel, mitzadin yonei asokim, from the perspective of asokim, right? He says of the business person, mizdamnim heimim anoshim sheinim. They have to meet all kinds of people. Ulapomim nimtza beheima besviva leitova. And sometimes they are in not a healthy and good environment. You go into a business deal, you got to have a meeting, and it brings you into a place, and it's shady, and this, and that, and the characters, lo tov, but you got to go. So these are the three issues that the Yoshev Oil has, versus the three issues that the Baal Asik has. Therefore, the type of education that you're able to use to educate the one who sits and learns, next page 55, as the Alter Rebbe writes, in Tanya chapter 30, he alludes there to he's alluding to the Alter Rebbe writes, someone who sits all day is obligated to sit in the market, right? And his Yetzer Hara is tempted. The Alter Rebbe talks about in that chapter, Yonason, about not having ego, gaiva. And he bases it on the Mishnah, right? That Avidan is called din v'cheshbon. Din v'cheshbon. Right? You shouldn't be judgmental. So the Alter Rebbe says, you're saying you're so holy, you're so frum and everything else. Well, wait a minute. You are not challenged by the issues that the other person has, which are that he has to deal with the market. That's from Tanya chapter 30. Okay, so the Rebbe says here the same thing. The Rebbe says the same thing. You cannot use the same methods of guidance and educating to someone who's a Yoshev Oil versus to someone who is a Bal Asokim. Ki hu dover hanimne asher abal esek yisnag b'chol tachloisoyav k'ma Yoshev Oil. It is impossible for the business person to conduct himself in all of his manners just as the Yoshev Oil. Yesh hevdel ben abali asokim l'Yoshev Oil. I skipped. When we're talking about matters that are permissible completely according to Torah, surely there's a difference between business people and Yeshvel. In other words, if it's mutter, it's mutter. So the Baal Asik, he's allowed to go anywhere that's mutter al pi Torah, even though some of those places aren't exactly the atmosphere and environment that he would prefer being. Right? But it's mutar al pi Torah. So for him, he needs that for his work. So when you're mechanech such a person, that the attitude has to be a very different one than talking to someone who is a Yoshev Oil. He's not allowed to be there. Why not? Because even though it's mutar al pi Torah, but he, being a Yoshev Oil, is judged by Hashem, and God wants of him, forget about being judged, God wants of him a higher standard. This is something that many people have a difficulty relating to. The idea that there's a higher standard expected of certain people based on their hisaskos, their job. But that's the facts. That's what the Rebbe is saying here. So yes, we expect more from a rabbi and a gabbai and a Moshe Rabbeinu and all of that. Why? Because they take and a leader and a politician. Because being that you're in a position of leadership on some level, more is expected of you. And sometimes this gets very, very uncomfortable, and that's why people drop out from various leadership positions, right? And I'm not talking about anything outrageous. That's outrageous. I'm talking about even things that are not outrageous. When people start pointing the finger at you, that's when you could say, well, to yourself, you're saying, I'm a human being just like you, I'm a regular guy, and what do you want from me? Well, I'm sorry, my friend. So the Rebbe says, yes, Moshe.
Delphin, I want to ask you a question. You just used examples of leadership, people in a leadership position. You used a Rav, a Gabbai. You mentioned Moshe Rabbeinu, but then you also mentioned something like a leader, a politician. Fact of the matter is, though, is that we've just been speaking. I feel like you made a jump, though, from a Yoshvei Oil, who's, let's say, his Talmud Chacham. He's learning. Let's say that's his malacha, is his learning, as opposed to, let's say, like a Rav of a city who could be a massive Talmud Chacham, but he has to deal with all types of people all day. He's not necessarily like a Rav Grossman. Right? I'm thinking just of some of the Rabbanim that were just in a,
I understand. Yes.
So there, I'm just saying, like, you have a person who is a tremendous, let's say, Talmud Chacham, but at the same time, he's got to deal with all types of people and all types of situations. Therefore, therefore, there's no question that person has to hold himself up to standards. There's no question about that. I'm bringing it back to the issue of the example you gave about, say, like a Rav. Is that the type of person right now that the Rebbe Raayatz is speaking about? He's talking about both.
He's talking about that, a Rav would have one standard, and a Yoshev Oil has another standard, but it's unique to Yoshev Oil. So you're right. In other words, you're only strengthening the point of the Rebbe. The Rebbe's point is that depending on what profession they have, what job, involvement they do, that's the standard of chinuch that they have to be given, and you need to take that into consideration in being mechanech them. Okay. I mean, I lumped them all in. Yes, Avi.
Everything that we've learned up until now, looking into a person's talents, looking into a person's situation, if he's a Baal Esek or if he's the Yoshev Ohel, that's good if you're learning with me. Here we have Yonasan, Hillel, Moshe, me, all of us.
And Yaakov, and you forgot Yaakov.
Well, because he's not on my screen. I can only see the people who I mentioned.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yaakov. Nothing to be sorry about. I love you. You're teaching me. So you and I know each other very well. I know where you come from. You know where I come from. So I can gear myself to you. Now, all of a sudden, I add Hillel, who's a psychologist. I add Yoni, who's in real estate. I owe Moshe, who's in Safrus and art and I don't know what. And Yonason, I'm not exactly sure what he does. Now, it's harder for me to gear to only, I have a curriculum. Today, I want to cover addition of 2 digits. But each guy has different kishronot, comes from a different place. How does these principles, which seem to work very well on a one-to-one basis, fit in? So I may be taking you off on a tangent.
No. Excellent question. I think maybe some of the shiurim you missed. The Rebbe addressed your point, I believe, definitely indirectly, if not directly. And the answer is, you're right. That's what he's saying. That a mechanech has to focus in with every individual student and person individually to succeed.
But I got a class of 30. In this case, we have a class of 5.
No, I'm not. He's not talking about in a classroom situation. He's saying, like, before you begin, know your students, know who they really are, know their situation. And then you'll succeed. Of course, in teaching a class for a group, you try to choose as a teacher. You're a teacher too. A level that's shaveh l'chol nefesh, that everyone can benefit from, and some of us do a better job of at that, and some do not so good. And that's how they score their points, whether they're considered popular and good teachers or not so. But the fact is that I over the years, I'll give you an example. Even in this group, I'm not going to say who, what, when, past, present, so you don't know what I'm talking about. There have been a few people who said, well, the level it's nice, but I want to learn deep stuff. And I said, you want to learn only deep stuff? This year is not for you. Because this is a shear that takes some deep ideas, some practical ideas, and we're putting it all together. It's a certain energy and shear. You want to learn Zohar? This is not the shear for Zohar. I'm not teaching you Zohar. I will cite Zohar, I will explain that section, but I'm not teaching the Zohar. And if you want Zohar, but if you want to benefit from understanding a citation of Zohar and what it means in your life, and you really understand that little piece of Zohar, come here. Okay? So the answer is, in that way, a teacher tries to give everyone something. But to your question, the answer is, in a group setting, it's impossible to do what he's suggesting. He's not talking about in a group setting. He's talking more on an individual level. He's talking about to these two mashpiyim in Lubavitch who had 18 boys under their wings. And some of them didn't want to learn Chassidus, and many of them had gaiva. They were big Talmidei Chachamim, and the system, and a yeshiva system was relatively new, and there's Zionism, and there's Haskalah, and so he's telling these two guys, you want to succeed, you really better know your students and work with them individually, and listen, Hillel's a counselor. That's what a good counselor is. That's what a good rabbi is. It's not, yes, you get inspiration for coming to a shir, coming to a rabbi's drusha, but at the end of the day, if you really want change, it's one-on-one. Avi, have I addressed a little of your?
You addressed it all. Thank you.
Okay.
Shkoyach, I like
Thank you. Okay, so now let's continue inside. The yesh dvarim asher ein oven v'chet lebali asakim mimisnagim kain. This next few lines is very important. There are certain things that if a Baal Asik does it, it's not considered a transgression, Yaakov. It's not. But there's these very same things. If someone who's a yeshiva sits and learns, he does them lechet, it's considered a sin. Lo yechupar, that's not forgivable. Yechoshev lehem, that's what it's considered for them. Vehem bechlal mechal l'shem shemayim, and they are then in the category of desecrating God's name. And this is so true. This is so true. Okay? And again, I emphasize this nekuda because, the expression, if it's too hot in the kitchen, get out. The Rebbe told Menachem Begin, I think in 76, when he came to see the Rebbe with Camp David, I forget what it was an issue, and the Rebbe said to him, he said to the Rebbe, the pressure from the United States is, on Eretz Yisrael is so great and all that. And the Rebbe told him in nice words, it's on tape, I actually have it somewhere, try your best, nevertheless. But, my friend, you want to be the leader of Eretz Yisrael? Sorry, stand up. Otherwise, get out of the kitchen. If you can't stand up, get out of the kitchen. So a leader, the Frierdiker Rebbe here, the Raayatz, uses very heavy. L'chet lo yechupar v'heim b'chlal mechal l'shem shemayim. Yeah. When we read in the newspaper about a leader, a rabbi, whatever, that's done something not nice on any level, it reverberates all over. Whereas some regular chevraman that does something, no one knows, no one cares, and not that that's justified. Kitzer, HaChinuch v'Hadracha.
It doesn't mean he doesn't have recourse, Rebbe.
He doesn't have what?
It doesn't mean he doesn't have recourse to do tshuva.
Of course he can do tshuva.
What's lo yuchupar?
What?
So what's lo yuchupar?
He means until he does tshuva is lo yuchupar. Of course he can do tshuva, Yaakov. Ein lecha davar ha'emet b'fnei tshuva. There's nothing that stands before tshuva. You know what's the expression? If there's a will, there's a way. Talking about tshuva, this morning an idea came to me as I'm showering in the mikveh. The best ideas come in the mikveh. And the idea is, I want to write a book on Bali Tshuva. You talk about Lo Yekupar. I want to write Chabad Bali Tshuva, Eish HaTorah Bal Tshuvas, Arachim Bal Tshuvas, and any other Bells Bal Tshuvas. I think it would be a good book. People would, not one better than the other. Just look at each group. What do you say, Hillel?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that needs some deeper inquiry and so on.
Yeah. No, especially today, the children and grandchildren, they're integrated already, and it's an important, because it comes up, I know in Chabad, I'm sure in other communities too. Hey, my father, my mother led such a lifestyle till they did tshuva, why can't I not take a taste? That's just, a common argument. But there's all kinds of ramifications. Go ahead.
Well, Baruch Hashem, my all of my children are religious, married, and I'm talking about my married children, but they all have sort of taken a different path. They've all taken out a different slice than us, and we're fine with it. It's like it was like an affirmation of that we raised them with the idea that that they could have room to make their own choices.
Right. Well, that would be part of my study because in from birth homes, if you're allowed to say that, FFB homes, that issue that you identified is more rigid.
Often, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's happening now more where there is more room, but it's only, why? Because they see that they're not scoring the points, so they're giving in. But in Shita, my son just told me, he met someone who moved in here. This is Coral Springs, Florida. It ain't Brooklyn, it ain't Yerushalayim, okay? Or Muncie.
Ain't Beit Shemesh.
It ain't Beit Shemesh, right? Okay. He meets a guy who was 28, a Lakewood boy who grew up in Lakewood. Not that he learned at the yeshiva, he had big issues with his parents, and they disowned him. Now they took him back. But the point is, there are issues. There are lots of issues that we need to look at. So anyway, I just reminded myself because Yaakov said, Lo Yechupar, and he's right. He made a good observation. What do you mean, Lo Yechupar? I meant to say, till he does tshuva. And the value of tshuva is ongoing. And of course, the misnomer is that tshuva is not just for someone who literally became a Baal Teshuvah. He was eating the McDonald's and he stopped eating. The Baal Teshuvah is even more important for the frum person. I can tell you that. because what?
Person came to the Ger Rebbe and he introduced himself. He said, he asked him where he learns. He says, "I learned Arts and He says, "Over finish about Shuvah." He says, "For Vosnit."
Exactly. It's so easy to ride on your high horse and everything else. So and you should know the Rebbe. What I heard from the Rebbe over so many years, and it has its source in Torah and Gemara and Kabbalah and Zohar. The Rebbe's whole attitude towards tshuva is not bali tshuva. His attitude was that the Torah says tshuva. In other words, it's a true concept as a Jew, any Jew, and from there you begin. You understand? He didn't come to concept of opening a Hadar Torah or a Maristan or a Baal Tshuva Yeshiva or tearing Rabbi Goldstein of the Diaspora Yeshiva, who consulted with the Rebbe together with Shlomo Karlbach in the early 60s, and there are letters to that, okay? Or Rabbi Freifeld of Shara Yoshev and Far Rockaway. I mean, these were leaders in the Baal Tshuva movement. And of course, from our Sabeach, what's it called, Rabbi Nu? Weinbach, but I mean from Meisha Torah too. Whatever, Weinberg, Rabbi Weinberg. Anyway, all these different, Noach Weinberg, right? They all tapped into the Rebbe back in the 50s and 60s. I'm not going to go in the book. We'll talk a little bit about that, but it's not even, and it's fine. The tshuva needs to be from that perspective, and that's why it's relevant. I mean, what do you say to a statement in the Holy Zohar that says, when Mashiach will come, what will be one of the accomplishments? Asa lasova tzadikaya b'tiyufta, which is Aramaic for, he will make tzadikim avidu tshuva. That's from the Zohar. That's what it says. And what does it mean? What we see that it means is that the idea of tshuva by a tzaddik is reality, just like by a Baal Tshuva kipshutai, and even more so. And I think it does tie into what we're talking about over here.
But l'chora, you could say that the tshuva of a tzaddik, since a tzaddik has been mahafe the Ra in the left chamber of the heart, that their tshuva is only in the realm of their nefesh elokus, that they could do better.
Oh, that's a very good point. Obviously, you've thought about it, and that's good. You learned about it, which is good. The answer is you're right. However, the Rebbe spoke about this issue that you're bringing up. And he said two things. One thing he said is, when a tzaddik helps a Baal Teshuvah do tshuva, he gets the virtue of Baal Teshuvah that he himself doesn't have. Right, exactly.
Well, yeah. It also seems, Baruch and I we just finished the 12th parak in the Chasidus Mevueres on Netanya.
Yes.
And there was a note in there that was just fascinating, because we were really doing a deep dive into the whole concept of the Beinoni versus the Tzaddik and the mechanics of that. And in one of the little notes he says, the definition of a Tzaddik is different in this parak than from the beginning, where he talks about the tzaddik more like the Rambam talks about it. The
Chatzi, yeah.
Good side and the bad side.
Right.
So it's that was a helpful concept, because wrapping your head around the intricacies of how the Baal Tanya defines a tzaddik it's very precise and it's very nuanced.
Right, and when we learn general texts, we're not really looking. That's not the tzaddik we're talking about.
Right.
Right. So
right.
So back to your point.
Maybe another work of Hasidus or something, and it's talking about a tzaddik. They're not necessarily applying the distinction that the Baal Tanya is making between a tzaddik and a Beinoni and so on. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
But as it's relevant to your point over here regarding the Baal Teshuvah and the tzaddik, so I said one point the Rebbe said is that when the tzaddik works with the Baal Teshuvah and helps the Baal Teshuvah become a Baal Teshuvah, he gets the virtue. And another nekuda is that he himself, you put it in terms of Nefesh Elokis versus Nefesh Abamis. I want to make sure. You understand, all you guys understand what Hillel said? Hillel said, according to the Tanya, a tzaddik is someone who has transformed completely his Yetzer Hara, right? So, what does the Zohar mean? When Mashiach will come, the tzaddik will do tshuva. What is he doing tshuva for? He has no Yetzer Hara. Yaakov, you heard this question? And the answer, and so Hillel gave the answer that it's within the Nefesh Elokis that the tzaddik has only at this point that he does tshuva. What kind of tshuva? So you could say it's like going from good to better, right? There is from bad to good, and there's from good to better, which, by the way, will be the state of reality when Mashiach comes. Since it says, I'll obliterate all evil from amongst you when Mashiach comes. So what's going to be the free choice, and what's going to be the avodah from good to better? Similar to a tzaddik, whose choice is in from good to better. So also lasava tzaddikai b'tiyufta, Mashiach will bring a tzaddik to a position of tshuva, meaning from good to better. That's what he said. You wanted to say something more?
Well, I just want to just say that there's an interesting parallel, because when I was trained to be a clinical social worker, a lot of the emphasis to a lot of what constituted my education was sort of like learning what was wrong with people. Different diagnoses and categories of mental, emotional disorder. But in my life as a therapist, one of the things that has evolved, and I think I reflect the field of therapy in that time, is that what helps people change in psychotherapy is much more, I would say close to virtually all more focusing on positive things and resources and skills and than it is on focusing on sort of problems from the past. So in that sense, it's a little bit like, it's almost always a sense of like what's good and what could be better. So I hear a little echo of what you're saying in the idea of psychotherapy as I think about it.
But we cannot go away. Sur merav aseh toiv. This is also part of what I would be studying and writing about. They go hand in hand. And the fact is, if you don't deal at some point with sur merah, whatever that issue is, it's going to come back to haunt you. It's still there. So, I hear what you're saying, Hillel, and maybe I would say that the emphasis now by you is the positive, and you were taught in the beginning, as you were taught, the emphasis was looking for the negative. I can hear that, but at the end of the day,
it's definitely an evolution. But I don't disagree with you. I think that Lamaisi, you're absolutely right, and that's a critique within the field of some of the more positive therapies, is that they can set people up for a fall by emphasizing changes that are more superficial. I think they can also set people up for positive development.
Right. So the Rebbe also in the last chapter or two, he spoke about, remember, misleading. The Mechanech, misassesses and misevaluates who the student and who is and gives them a false hope and a false derech. Because they never figured out. I think you missed a few of those classes, but that we learned about that. That's why it's so important to know who the person is, so that when you deal with the second issue, which is the situation, as he calls it, in which we're in the middle of learning now, you'll deal with it properly. Anyone else wanted to say anything? Any thoughts?
No, good stuff.
Yeah, Moshe?
I just want to say, it's interesting we've gone to the discussion about tshuva, but this last line in the paragraph that the Rebbe Raayatz writes, it's like, I mean, it is so, such a critical line, because unfortunately we have all seen so many people in positions of leadership, both rabbinic leadership and political leadership, who have made such an unbelievable chilul Hashem by their actions and are, unfortunately, some of them, are still sitting in jail.
Yeah.
And it can be very, it's interesting because to be a Yoshev Ol and to be sitting in the Beis Medrash all day and not to have concerns, well, like, what's the chiddush? What's the chiddush of a person, not being challenged then?
There's no chiddush, but
I'm just saying the person's out in the world and who has to be a leader, and at the same time, has to deal with all types of crazy, complicated situations. That's a real avoda. That's a very serious.
Okay,
avoda.
True, but the Torah does speak about how the beauty of learning, the importance of learning. And there's some people, as we say, nafshi chashke baTorah. My soul lusts, desires Torah. It exists. It exists, and Baruch Hashem that exists. You know what I'm saying? Hashem wants everything, and based on what derech a person chooses, that's what they do. So it's not for us to poo-poo. It's not my mahalach. It's not what I wanted for myself or my family. But yes, there is that issue. Okay, Chevra, remember Sunday, I won't even be back, but we'll resume in Shem Monday, okay? Have a great Shabbos to everybody. Nice learning. It's Lag Baimer, right? Reb Shimon, listen to this word. I leave you with this word. It came to me yesterday. The Gemara says, I think it's a Gemara in Shabbos, Kedai Reb Shimon lismoch olav b'shas hatchak. One can rely, one can rely on Reb Shimon in a situation when it's difficult, shas hatchak. So this is the way Chaim Dalfin teaches it. Kedai Reb Shimon, you can rely on Reb Shimon, lismoch olav, you can rely on him, b'shas hatchak, you can rely for him to bring, the chak means also to push, like the end, to bring Mashiach. Kedai Reb Shimon, it's narrow, it's uncomfortable. We don't have Mashiach now. It's very uncomfortable. Rely on Reb Shimon, list Becholav, that he will bring Shas Atchak. He'll bring the end. Take it or leave it. Have a great day, a good Shabbos, and a Freilich Lag Baimer to everybody. Take care.
That's a great word.
Thank you. Zayt gesund, everyone. Bye-bye.